into the Val and Val show, where conversation is art. Conversation is art. Conversation is art. You should chime in. Ain't no telling what to spark on the Val and Val show. Ain't no telling the Val and Val show. You know, ain't no telling where we go on the Val and Val show. Ain't no ceiling, cause the art of conversation is the flow. It's that creativity available when we speak, available in our homes, available in the streets. We just trying to get it sparking and take it a little deeper. Keep it casual while fireside chatting with our people. Yeah, we take it a little deeper. It get hot when we fireside chatting with our people. Cause conversation is art. Conversation is art. You should chime in. Ain't no telling what'll spark on the Val. The Val and Val show. The Val and Val show.
Well, hello.
Good
How y'all
afternoon.
doing? First, let me apologize for these drab backgrounds. But I am on the road and my son is moving. So I am actually in a room that's not even ready yet. Okay. But however, nonetheless, welcome to Conversation is Art, the Val and Val show. And I'm one of the CIAs. Val, my other Val, is off tonight. He's on vacation. He may pop in. So as you all can see, we got our doctor here tonight, Dr. Demel Coleman, who has been taking us through a mental health series. And in case you all don't know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we have been putting some posts out on the page related to mental health. And hopefully by now, you all are taking this serious, you all. We got some serious mental health issues in the world that we really need to normalize this so folk will get help. And as well as we educating you, you may recognize some of these signs in yourself or others, your children. Children are dealing with this at very young ages. So our goal is to eradicate this and have better coping mechanisms and just ways to deal with it. So welcome, Dr. Coleman. How you doing?
Good afternoon. Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Hey, and I know you sitting on ready to go. Ready to go. Hey, as you all know, he always sends us a lot of information to share. Now, I'm functioning with one computer tonight, and I got my tablet. So when he get to talking, if I look distracted, I'm not really distracted. I'm going to be trying to copy and paste all this stuff so that you will have access to it. Hey, Carter, how you doing? So everyone, when you come on, like and share, Carter, invite all your folks out there because they need to hear this. You probably need to hear it too tonight, because we're going to be talking about a subject that I think is very much needed. You know, the last time we talked about depression just in general, and a lot of folks thinking it was a chemical imbalance. And we think of people just being all sad and depressed, but this time we're going to the other spectrum with the high functioning folks, which I think I probably was one of those in a former life. But thank God I figured out that was not a way to sustain myself long term. So I appreciate me being an ER nurse. I think they helped me identify some things that just were not healthy. And so we're going to learn about all this behavior we learn, especially in America. Pursue the American dream. Go get it. You know, we like them people. So might not be in your best interest to stay like that all the time. Okay, so Dr. Coleman, you sent me the agenda. So let me see. We're going to let you start off in your own way, but I know one of the things you're doing in the introduction is define high functioning depression. So take it away, Doc.
Well, one of the things that people don't realize, okay, there is not any blood work we're going to be able to do to separate one from the other. So when we think about depression, we talked about that. In a nutshell, it's kind of like going from a severe form to a milder form, but it's not really milder. So I always like to use parables, as they say in the country. So one of the things I want to give you one to think about. Right now, COVID is really hot. And when people think about COVID and COVID deaths, most of your deaths are what? Related to people who did not have the vaccine. And so the people who had the vaccine, that doesn't mean they don't get COVID. It just means it's not as severe for most people. Okay. Now, even the people who have the vaccine, some of them will still die. And if you think about depression, most of the people who have depression are the same type of people who are going to have the high functioning depression. And this goes back to our discussion last time about people in the ACE study and trauma. People who have that what is called persistent depressive disorder, dysthymic disorder, or high functioning depression, they had a lot of trauma in their childhood too, just not so severe. So in essence, they develop a vaccine or antibodies to deal with depression. But the problem is those individuals, because they overcame some difficulties in their life, they develop what is called resilience. And so these are the type of people that are very perfectionistic. They push themselves, they're overachievers, and or they're very conscientious. So you got the people who are your valedictorians, your salutatorians, who came from horrible backgrounds, and they're almost robotic because they're on course, they're go-getters, as you said earlier. Or they're the type of people who are extremely conscientious. They always are thinking about others. And these people have had issues that happened in their childhood that kind of set them up for this in the first place. And so they've developed these antibodies to allow them to deal with the stresses of life. But the problem is, because they developed these antibodies, they think they can do more than is humanly possible. And the reality is many of them do. And so they keep pushing themselves, and everybody heaps praise on them. And so they just thrive in chaos. And eventually what happens to these individuals, they become overwhelmed.
Wow.
And so they start beginning to shut down in essence. And so
now, Dr. Coleman,
okay.
So what you saying, the very people that we admire, we actually teach others like, oh, you see that person over there, they'll go get her. You need to be like them. Now, don't you go over there and be with that lazy person laid back that don't seem like they doing a lot. So
that's right.
This is really something that's to think about, because I think of, and I'm just gonna throw this name in, I think of someone, you think of a Bill Gates, somebody that's phenomenal. What's the man? Elon Musk. You know, those driven people. I'm gonna even say Barack Obama. You know.
Well, I'm gonna get a little even closer than that. I took the ACE study that I told you guys about before, right? Remember we talked about if somebody has greater than 7 triggers, their risk of suicide increased by 3,144%. Well, I decided to take it tonight before we had this show, and I hit the number 6.
Woo.
Yeah, that's not good. And if you hit 6, and here's what it told me. Basically, my life span is decreased by 20 years if I don't make significant changes.
Oh my goodness. Now, where is the ACE test?
Well, you can go on NPR and just look up ACE study, and anybody on this show can pull it up. So here's what, and it's a simple test. It doesn't mean, here's the thing, just because your score is horrible doesn't mean that's your fate. The reason you want to know is because you need to make drastic changes. And I look at my own life and I think about it. And so when people say, so I was that smart kid who did extremely well in school. I came out of a divorce home. There was alcoholism in the home at one period. So I learned, I had sickness and asthma as a child as well. So what I learned is that I had to push myself. So here I am in medical school. I'm behind the 8 ball. And so one of the problems you have is when you get in medical school, I'm sitting here looking at competition, I'm pushing myself. And then I realized I have an autoimmune disease. And part of the reason why I had that autoimmune disease is because when you take that ACE study, those who are on here, you should really take it. You'll find out that the higher your score, if you get above a 4, that means you got chronic stress in your body. So the scales are 0 to 3, which is low risk. Intermediate is from 1 to 3. Low risk is 0 to 1. Intermediate is 1 to 3, and high risk is greater than 4. And like I said, yeah. So if you got a 4, your risk of suicide increases by 1,200%.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Say that number again.
4, the number 4, your risk of suicide increases by 1,200%.
Oh my
and these
God.
people who we talked about have increased issues. And they did a study in 2014 with Yale. I see you, Val. I know you good to see you. But they did a study at Yale with people who came from traumatic home situations and normal kids, so to say. And what they found is genetic changes within those individuals whose scores were higher that increased their likelihood for heart disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer. in addition to the depression and the anxiety. So
Wow.
here we are, we're praising these people like myself who push themselves. And I'll be honest, I didn't even have a hobby until probably about 5 years ago.
Wow. Wow.
There were periods when I was doing residency because I knew what it was to, when my parents got divorced, we financially struggled. So when I got in medical school, there were periods when I know I went on probably 2 hours of sleep because I was moonlighting and working and trying to pay off my debt so I can achieve that American dream. And I know many of my colleagues did the same. So we're talking about 3% of the US population, are overachievers, high achievers. These are the people who have what is called high functioning depression. And so one of the things you'll realize, and I laugh now because when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, I'm talking about myself. There was a period in my life when my wife and I used to joke, I said I used to have what is called the Eeyore complex. If something bad was going to happen, it was going to happen to me. And if you look at that information I put, that's one of the problems with people who have what is called high functioning depression. They have a series of constant, just negative things over and over. Many of these things they can't control, and they just get immune to it, and they get used to it. And I remember I was in medical school when I found out I had this autoimmune disease. And I will tell you, for about a 6-month period, I went to every one of my rotations, made A's on my rotations during my clinicals. And I would go to rotation and come home and sleep. I would come home and go straight to sleep because I was exhausted. I would sleep from the time, and I did this for about 6 months.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
So
Amazing.
so when we think about this stuff, it's not, I don't think it's so out there when you talk about Bill Gates. I think if you look at anybody who's very successful, who's driven, and if you dig deeper, they probably fit into this category.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier, and I was sharing with you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I fit this. That's how my mom was, and I think my saving grace became when I became a nurse and worked in the ER. And I'm one of these people, I'm looking at the stats. I'm like, let me see who have heart attacks.
Right.
Let me see who have stroke. Let me see who come in under mental stress. And very rare was it a laid back, chill personality. It was always that person. And we even brag about, I can function on 4 hours of sleep.
That's right.
So, which that ain't healthy at all.
No.
Or, I'm sitting here thinking now, and I'm proud of my son. He just graduated cum laude, and I'm like, okay, maybe he just should.
Well, it's not. The issue is not that drive. The issue is finding the balance. And unfortunately, we live in a society that rewards unhealthy behaviors.
Right.
And
yeah,
the more you push yourself, I mean, you can, like you say, you can go on YouTube and hear these motivational speakers all the time talking about, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, you'll get there a lot sooner than you want to.
You know what, Dr. Coleman?
Now, hold on 1 second.
Okay.
I just wanted to pop on real quick. We're down here in Myrtle Beach vacationing, and I just want to say hello to you. And I appreciate all the work you're doing for us and all the information, man. You are super smart. I'm talking about super smart. And Val, thank you for hooking everybody up. I got to run, guys. I just want to say hello to you.
Well, good to see you.
Have a good one.
Enjoy.
Take care. All right, thank you.
Okay, so, and the thing about it is, I even think about school. You have the IB program. That's a grueling curriculum. As a matter of fact, when my son went to high school, they wanted him to be in the program, and he played basketball. He was smart. It was the engineering academy, the IB, or regular curriculum or whatever. So when we had a conversation, we were like, okay, you like to play basketball. You're a gamer. The IB program is going to be real rigorous. And so was the engineering academy, but it had a balance, with it. So after conversation, it was kind of, everybody was like, well, why did you let him not go to the IB program? I said, because I wanted my child to have as much of a normal opportunity to be a child versus feeling like he was a achiever. I had a friend of mine, her son actually went to the IB program and lost the ability to rest and sleeplessness. And she said, finally, he woke up in the middle of the night, was standing on the bed. And she said, she woke up like, what is wrong with you? He was like, I don't want to do this. I feel like I'm not being a child. I'm not going to join high school. So they did allow him to step away, thank God. Ooh, so this is a lot to think about, because we actually started instilling this in our children. You know, we want kids to know the alphabet and count to 100, and they ain't even potty trained.
That's right. And I was one of those guilty parents with my son, and he and I had to have a heart-to-heart when he was older, and I had to apologize to him, because that was me, man. When he was young, it was automatic. You was reading a book, and we were reading. My son just wanted to have fun and enjoy life.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here in the back of my head thinking, man, if you do that, you ain't gonna make it in this. This world is gonna chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong approach. You got to find that balance. And I didn't have it. And I'm just being honest. And like I said, it took my son helping me to look at myself, to realize
and understand it. Well, you know what, Dr. Coleman, I thank you for saying it and sharing it here, because oftentimes, definitely parents don't admit when they made the misstep. But you said, going back to something you said in that statement, and telling your son that, you know, you got to be ahead, you got to be this. That's and right. Unfortunately, we as Black people, we've heard that all our life. We got to be better. We got to study harder. We got to work harder.
Twice as hard.
So I'm at, you know, I got to a point in my life, which I decided I wouldn't go any further probably in my career, because I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I am not going to meet these rules of engagement, because every time you get the 1 degree, you change the rules. Now I need 2. Now I need a PhD. So we're always reaching. And the word resilient, I almost detest that word.
There you go.
Because resilient means you're in a state of overcoming something. We cannot live our life in a state of overcoming. We have to get to a point of, this is it. And that may mean you got to decide, I'm going to live this lifestyle so I can have some peace. I know one thing, healthcare drives you to be that way. I'm going to speak from a nurse. I think, I'm going to say this honestly, the nurse is probably the one person that don't get the option to check out of their shift if it's short and somebody don't show up.
That's right.
The physical therapist can go.
That's right.
OT can go.
That's right.
But as a nurse, if there's not enough people there and I walk off, it's abandonment for me.
Yep. And you can lose your license. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're forced into some of this overachieving, and then taking care of people.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole medical profession in general, because I remember it was ice on the road, and basically as a doctor, somebody's got to be there.
You got to go.
You don't have that option.
Or you got to stay when you get stuck.
Or you stay, one of the two. Either stay and get stuck, or you have to report in. And I think that's the case in society as a whole. But the issue is, I don't think the issue is the resilience, because it's kind of like we said earlier when I talked about antibodies. The issue isn't the resilience. The issue is when you make the resilience everything.
Yeah.
When you sacrifice who you are at the expense of achieving something, that, just being honest, once you get it, you may be happy for a few minutes, and then that thrill is gone. You know, we have lived in this culture, and this kind of goes back to that other topic of intrinsic values. We value stuff more than peace.
Yeah.
And that's really at the heart of everything, is that, and there's nothing wrong with wanting your kids to achieve, nothing wrong with wanting to have your kids to be the best, but where's the balance? And too many of us do not find the balance. And too many of us don't have the balance because, just being real, and like I told my son, I know what it is to be on the other side of that coin. You know, my dad made most of the income in our home, and when my parents got divorced, we went from one extreme to the next. And I'll tell you the truth, that whole experience after the divorce, it was seared in me. It drove me to the point to where I was working on less than 2 hours of sleep because I had to have my medical student loan paid off. And I worked my butt to pay off my medical student loan in 5 years with a wife and 2 kids. Now that's insane. That's insane. But
I mean, and we pride ourselves in this oh, I can keep going, you know, like
That's
the
right.
Energizer Bunny, but you got to change the batteries at some point. You got to change those batteries. I don't care. Well, look, let me ask you this,
Mhm.
because here in America,
That's right.
the good old USA, where we're number one, we're so materialistic. And I contrast this. One of my good friends moved to Portugal in December 2019, and she and her husband said they did not realize how stressed out they were
That's
until
right.
they got to a country where people just slowed down
That's
and
right.
had a slower life. And then she said when they came back to visit Atlanta, they came back, flew into Atlanta in 2021, I think it was.
Mhm.
And she said the moment they walked out the airport,
That's
it was
right.
like shock to them
That's
because
right.
it was ambulance running,
That's
all
right.
the noise. And she said, she was like, oh my God, how was I living? And she realized a lot of her health problems
Mhm.
dissipated when she got over there.
That's right.
Her husband, she was like, she was sleeping better, got healthier because over there they walk a lot.
Mhm.
And so how do you undo America? I mean, is
You don't
anything
undo
is fixable?
you don't undo America. You have to decide to unplug from the system yourself.
System.
You have to decide. And here's what people will not accept, because this is the culture we live in. We live in the most wealthiest place in the world. And they've done what is called happiness studies of countries. We're not even in the top 15. We're in the
Right now we're defining
wealthiest.
wealth as money.
That's yes. And we have all the financial resources more than any other country in the world. And we're not even in the top 15 as far as citizens being happy with themselves and the life they're living.
Wow.
We work longer. We have, I mean, you just look in our culture. So one of the guys who did this study that I was talking about the last time, he was so moved by the study, he basically sold all his stuff, moved into the woods with his wife and his kids, and they live a very agrarian lifestyle where they basically live off the land and live within their means. That's the whole premise of, if you watch Netflix, there was a show called The Minimalist. I think everybody should watch it. This guy, he talked about how he had moved up in the company. He was financially successful. His mom got cancer, and he couldn't even take off time to go spend time with his mom who had cancer.
Wow.
And when she died, a piece of him died. His marriage fell apart. His mom died. He couldn't visit her, but he had all the money and the status that he wanted. But he was empty.
You know what, though, Dr. Coleman, you made me think about when you talked about the minimalist. Now, granted, when our forefathers became free and everything, life was hard. But I can remember growing up, little country girl from rural South
That's right.
Alabama. Yes, my parents had to work hard. It was the way the world was set up, stacked against them. But on the flip side of that, there was a lot of laughter and joy because they were content with what they had. They made the best of that situation. Now, granted, they had the trauma and stuff, but you didn't see them like we are.
No.
I was telling someone, I remember when my mom and my dad got off in the evening, we would go visit people, and people actually had time to visit each other after work. Now we're working longer hours and really having less. You know, today, right now, we're really in a what do you call it?
Inflation.
Inflation and headed toward a depression if something don't.
Well, I mean, but you just think about it. It's the way. See, the problem you have. Back in the day, there was a period where you could live on one income. But then people realized, well, if I work a little extra, I can get more stuff. And so they would work, somebody would work extra down the road, get more stuff. Then somebody would see them with more stuff. And they say, oh, they got more stuff. I need more stuff. Not regardless of the fact that whether or not you were happy, the fact that somebody else got a new car, I need a new car. So I need to work so I can get that car. I need that status. I need whatever they have to make me happy. And that's what we're having. And it's so sad that they've even created a term called FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh, my goodness.
And this is what teens have issues with, FOMO. And it's like, Are we serious? That's where the whole Netflix special, The Social Dilemma, where I would definitely encourage every parent to watch that, because our kids are getting so sucked into this cycle of just wanting more and more and more stuff to make them feel like their life has meaning.
But the thing about that is that the children's fault, because they learned that's how they were raised. I mean, you know, I raised my kids, and I have to, I'm a pat me and my husband on the back. My daughter actually did a tribute to us. It was on Facebook, and she talked about how she really appreciated how we raised them. You know, we raised them with their voice, but we also let them know this is all we're doing for you.
That's right.
One thing we were adamant about: you want to go on a cruise? I told them straight up, I ain't taking you on no cruise. You need to have something to do for yourself when you become an adult. All y'all parents want to take your children on cruises? Knock yourself out. I ain't took them to a foreign country. Those trips were for me and that, you know, the higher income earner, because I think you can give so much that they actually leave your house thinking they should live the quality of life that you allowed them to live, and then that sends them down a spiral because they cannot maintain it. You know, my son just moving to Orlando with his job. I was telling him, I said, listen, you ain't got to have it all right now, but do know, if you extend yourself too much, who you can't call.
Yeah.
Mom and dad busters, I'm not going to bail you out. Now, if something happened in your life that's beyond your control, that's fine. And then, you know, first you got to sell off some of this stuff too before I jump in. It's going to have to be something catastrophic, not, oh, I overextended. Well, put it on Facebook Live or wherever y'all sell stuff. And you'll be okay.
But when you think of high functioning depression, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with human beings in America who have gotten caught up in the system, and they're so caught up in it, they don't even realize it. And so it's kind of playing. Unfortunately, when you have trauma in your childhood and you're raised in a situation where you've been conditioned, and there's nothing wrong with pushing your kids to be the best. So I don't want nobody saying that, you know, Dr. Coleman said we shouldn't care if our kids make D's and F's, as long as they're happy. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, if your kid can't be a kid because they're focused on making 100, there's a disconnect. If your kid can't have, their schedule is so filled that they don't have time to have fun with their friends, there's a disconnect.
Well, Dr. Coleman, I'm gonna take it a little further than that. Adults, there are adults that I know. I'm like, what you doing? I'm gonna tell you what I've learned early on. NO is one of the most powerful, freeing things you can learn to say.
But Val, here's the problem. The people we're talking about, they're conditioned that their job is to take care of others. That's the conscientious people. They probably grew up in a home where they were the oldest kid, or they came from a broken home, and it was expected for them to step up and fill in that role to help take care of their siblings. And when you're that kid that's helping take care of other kids or helping your mom out, you get praised. And guess what? Every kid wants to be loved, Val. And the more you do this stuff and the more you get praised, the more you say, oh, I want to keep doing this. And it's not a conscious decision. And you keep doing that long enough. And it goes back to our conversation before about there's a part of your brain called the dorsal striatum. And that's where habits and addictions are formed. So if you get a kid and all their life, they're told that this is good, and they keep getting praised for sacrificing, that's all they know.
So it's kind of like if you come in and tell them you need to look at this and evaluate it, they're looking at you like, what?
Exactly.
This is working for me.
It is.
I'm good at this. Okay,
right.
So look, I'm looking at you had us for the 3 points tonight. So we've defined what is high functioning depression.
Right.
Next, we have what are the signs of high functioning depression. And when I read these, I was like, they are kind of like polar opposite of what we see them manifesting. And I guess, is this more or less in private or once it crash and burn?
Well, see, this is once they crash and burn. See, this is where they've pushed themselves too much and they start shutting down. Remember when I said earlier about how I got to that place where I was coming home, laying in the bed and sleeping after I got off work. That's where that quote unquote, I'm at home, I'm lazy. But when I'm around people, they don't know that.
You pushing through.
I'm pushing through it.
Smile on
That's
your
right.
face.
That's
what
right.
I said on the flyer, smiling faces tell lies.
That's right. So the whole time I'm coming home, I don't have no energy. I'm exhausted. And all I want to do is just sleep all the time. But that issue that I've been conditioned about, here's the thing. When you watch people in your home go through serious issues, and then those people still go to work, still do what they have to do, guess what you've been taught? That's how you deal with issues.
Just keep going.
You just keep going. So you come home, you're tired, you have no energy, you're sleeping too much. That's where those symptoms come in. But somehow you keep pushing yourself and you keep pushing yourself, even though when you come home, you're done. You're pulling away from people. You're not talking to people on the phone. People are wondering, did you just disappear all of a sudden? You didn't fall off the map because you're still going to work. You're still putting up the face. And this is where the problem comes in, because it's like when somebody commits suicide, you're like, I never saw that coming.
Wow. And that's something I've noticed, Dr. Coleman, I think we need to dig a little deeper in with suicide, because we think about somebody that's kind of really gotten withdrawn and already, but then all of a sudden you have this person that appears to have it all together.
That's right.
And they commit. Well, we knew he had some issues, but even with Robin Williams, that was a shocker for most people. It's like, wait a minute, what? And of course, I know you say we don't want to name these people, but the Judd lady was doing commercials and speaking out.
That's right.
And still, so wow.
And that's the issue, that they can put the front up. And so for everybody else, they look fine. But in their personal life, it's a wreck. And see, and this is where loved ones who know this person, they need to pay attention. When they see this person, okay, I haven't talked to such and such in a long time. Something's going on, or you show up and their house normally is like spotless. And all of a sudden, their house is looking a mess. And they'll tell you, oh, I've just been so overwhelmed. Okay. But they're holding conversation with you, acting like nothing's wrong, but their house looks a mess. There's a disconnect there. You see what I'm saying? Like they're used to dressing, they're dressed well, and all of a sudden they look a little wrinkled. They're not paying attention to their grooming or their clothes. And it's like they give you the impression that things are okay, but everything about them just ain't lining up. So that's the difference. That's the big difference between regular depression. Somebody who's severely depressed, you know it, you see it, it's in their demeanor, it's in everything they do. But the people with what is called persistent depressive disorder or high functioning depression or dysthymia, they have a low level of depression, but they keep putting up the front like everything else is okay.
One of our people listening, your one tonight just posted, they look great, but completely torn
That's
inside.
Right.
And we're great at wearing masks. Most people are. I mean, you can be in a low place or just experience some type of trauma, slap your clothes on and go out to some big function and laugh and talk and like you say, come back and just crash and burn. So now you talk about paying attention. Now, how do we handle that? Because I'm a man my own business. It ain't my business.
Yeah. Well, but this is where, like I said, loved ones and people who care, this is where you got to try to speak up, just really ask them. I said, hey, I know you said you've been busy, but usually you don't walk around with your clothes looking like that. Is there more going on? And at least keep pushing, keep nudging. Hey, it's okay sometimes to get overwhelmed. Life is difficult. And here's some things that you can pay attention to that'll kind of cue you in. So the perfect analogy would be like a donut. The donut looks pretty and fluffy on the outside, right? And so you can get distracted by the outward appearance of the donut and miss the fact that in the center is a hole. And this is what you have to think about with people who are high functioning depression. The trauma in their childhood has a hole in their life, and they become so successful that they expand their achievements to mask the hole. They never deal with their hole. They just keep being very productive. And so
we look at productivity as being okay.
That's right. So we think that person who's successful is good. But here's the thing, you'll tell when somebody who's very successful and driven, some of the big risk factors for them is the death of someone that they care about.
Okay.
So if somebody who who's high, who's a go-getter, who's driven, like I told you with this story about the minimalist, what got him was when his mother died. So if somebody they care about dies, and you start seeing abrupt changes in their demeanor, that's somebody you need to be mindful of. You see somebody who's a high achiever and they have a drastic problem with their job, that's somebody you want to be mindful of, because that's one of those outward things that they are using to identify them. So their job becomes their identity. And when they lose that job, see, for me, and I think about this and just being blunt, it's like when I went to medical school, I was really good in anatomy. And in fact, like they give this part in anatomy when you take the test in the neurological section. That's the hardest part in anatomy. And there you always have to scale. And I was like, I'm going to ace this. Sure enough, I think I made a 95 or a 96. I made the highest grade on the test. You couldn't even scale the class.
I'm saying you the person that the other folks
they were bad. Yeah. But so in my head, here's the reality. I think I told you this once before. I always looked up to Ben Carson in his book, Gifts, the Gifted Hands, whatever. And so in my head, I'm like, man, I'm really good at anatomy. I want to be a surgeon. In fact, I want to be a neurosurgeon. And I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to be a surgeon. And so imagine my identity is becoming this surgeon. And then lo and behold, I figure out I have an autoimmune disease that's not going to let me become a surgeon. So my friends, and I remember telling some of my classmates, and this is just how people don't pay attention. So all my friends knew that I wanted to be a surgeon. They all thought, we would have talks. And all of a sudden one day I was sitting talking to a friend. I told him, I said, well, I'm not going to be a surgeon anymore. He said, what? What do you mean? I said, well, I got this autoimmune disease and it may affect my hands. So I'm just going to go pick something that if I end up in a wheelchair that, I can still do. Now, mind you, when I got to medical school, there was 3 things I didn't want to do: Peds, OB, and Psych. And here I am telling this guy, I think I'm going to just go into psychiatry. And he's like, oh, for real? And so he's like, yeah, oh, okay. That makes sense. It made logical sense. It did. But that was same period I was going back home and going to sleep. So
and nobody, never questioned like what's going on, what made you change. But
he asked and I explained it to him. So and this is where I'm getting at. It's hard for somebody on the outside because you put up a good front. See, he asked questions. I gave him answers. I gave him rational, logical answers. And here's the thing, what I want people to understand. Get past rational responses and ask them, well, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? See, as long as I stayed logical and he responded with logical responses to me, there was nothing deeper. But I would say, ask how that feels and say, hey, look, for me, I just know if I was in your shoes and all I thought about was being a surgeon and all of a sudden something like this happened, man, that would make me feel depressed. Are you sure you're not depressed? You see what I'm saying? So now I'm giving you that leeway to be okay with being depressed because I just said I would be depressed. You get what I'm saying? So it takes away the stigma part of it. And so I just think about that situation. So when you're saying, okay, how do you reach these people? You got to reach them by being vulnerable yourself, by thinking about how would that make me feel? This guy's telling me something that in me feels painful. But see, when you first hear, you're like, man, that dude is resilient. That dude, man, I want to be like him. He just had something horrible happen. He's just going to be able to deal with it and keep moving on. Wow. I couldn't do that, man. You see what I'm saying? And so we give accolades on people who are able to just tell you something that's painful and they can say, well, it's life. You just have to. It's
kind of like when somebody lose a loved one.
That's right.
And we just like, oh, they just kept going. And I'm like this. I'm like, wait a minute. You need to take time. You need to grieve. It's okay to grieve. We don't give people the freedom.
No.
Well, like I said, we say it's okay not to be okay, but we don't give people the freedom not to be okay.
No, we don't.
Well, as my former pastor said, he said, if you're going through a crisis, you better be over in 2 weeks because that's your time with people. That's all they're going to give you. He said, if you ain't dealt with it in 2 weeks, you're going to be over. And sadly, that is true. And I think one thing we have to be careful of is when people go through something, we downplay it. You know, we say, "Oh, get over it. That ain't that bad." Right. But it's their perception.
That's right.
It's their perception. So wow, you giving us a lot. Hey, thank y'all for joining. The conversation is art, the Val and Val show, -1 Val. But Dr. Coleman is talking about high functioning depression. And I hope you all will go and share this. Make sure you share and like our page, because this needs to be shared with everyone, your family members and everything. Let me read this. What I didn't see what when Yolanda wrote this, but she put this. She said, "Wow, that statement was deep." Yolanda, if you would type it in the chat, which statement you were referring to. I'm doing double duty trying to chat because without my co-host to what you were referring to. And you all, we've got to be attentive of each other and care about each other. And sometimes you can help a person, you know, they're going through something, say, "Hey, let me take you to lunch."
That's right.
Y'all, the gift of presence, of being with somebody, and I'm not talking about texting. Go look at people. Like Dr. Coleman said, you don't know my house in disarray.
No.
And then another sign could be you may drop by and I won't let you in.
That's right.
If you do that a couple of times, you're wait a minute.
That's right.
Val won't let me in her house. What's up with that?
Or Val ain't returning my phone calls. All she's doing is sending texts. She's sending me these one-line text messages. And she used to send me a paragraph, and now it's just one line.
Yeah, so this is something. So I mean,
but like I said, the problem is we stay too logical. And I wonder, just being honest, and as we're talking, I think about how that would make me feel. I think if I heard somebody who I had a really good relationship with, and I think it would make you feel helpless, and maybe that's why people don't push, because you may feel like, man, I don't know what to say to them. And so I think what you do say is just being honest about how you would feel.
Yeah.
And giving them that space to know that it's okay to feel that way, that you don't have to be strong. It's okay to be human. Yeah. You know, and for those that are spiritual, one of the things I've learned as I started working on myself is the scripture where Paul asked God to remove the thorn from his flesh 3 times. And the response was no. And the statement was, "Nevertheless, my grace is sufficient." You know, you're made perfect in your weakness through Christ. See, many of us want to be perfect, but we won't ever be perfect. We're weak. And it's okay to be weakened, because life will weaken you. And the problem is, we think we have to be perfect. We think we have to be strong. And therein lies the biggest lie that we could tell ourselves. And without saying names, therein lies the biggest problem that happened to that one of those individuals you talked about. You know, you get a diagnosis of Lewy body dementia, and your whole life has been identified with your craft, with your ability to make people laugh, with your ability to remember lines. And I remember some of the movies and stuff, and I was just like touched by some of them. And to think that now you have a diagnosis that's going to strip you of your identity. And you
know what, Dr. Coleman, you're talking about identity. And I even tell my kids this, and I just always say this about my career. I said, listen, becoming a nurse didn't make me me.
That's right.
I'm just a nurse. I'm Valerie, period. Nursing is just what I happen to do. And some people do put their whole life into their careers or their business. And if that's taken away, I think about, 2008 or whatever, when the economy crashed. And you did have some people take their lives.
That's right.
Then you had some people were like, "Oh, that happened. We sold a house and we moved into an RV," and they kept. Right. And it was because, and most of them said, "Oh, I got that, I'll get something else." But those that ended up taking their life literally defined their life by what they had achieved.
Well, this goes back to another conversation we talked about. We talked about the lack of spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
See, we've replaced God with stuff. And so this country has become more and more materialistic. And in becoming more and more materialistic, we are, in essence, allowing stuff to define us instead of something deeper. And so when the stuff goes away, we have nothing to fall back on. And see, our ancestors, when you think about it, the way they made it through slavery was their faith. Man, they had songs that spoke of when they get over,
Yeah.
And so they did not allow the pains, and even in their songs, they sung songs that was painful, and you could hear the pain, but they still had hope. But the problem is nowadays, our hope is in stuff. And if that stuff and that identity is removed, then we don't have it. And so one of the things that you have a lot of awareness, Val, and that's wonderful. But if you're a child, and I've had this with clients several times, imagine a kid who grows up in a home where their mother, their father is very negative.
Yeah.
And they're negative from the very time they're young. All they get is negativity. And the only time they seem to get any relief is when they're making straight A's. So their mom will, say something nice to somebody else about how smart they are. But other than that, they just degrade them over and over and over again. Well, guess what that kid learns? This is the only way I can get past this pain.
Wow.
And so, unfortunately, it's great that you had great parents to help you to have a level of awareness. But when you don't have parents that help you to do that, where do you get it from? So these kids are learning how on their own to parent themselves. And they're just doing the best they can. And I have so many kids who have learned that, well, if the way to fix my mom and stuff, when you think about some of these entertainers that were really great, some of these entertainers like Richard Pryor, these people had some of the most traumatic childhoods.
Yes.
But out of that trauma, they learned a gift to overcome that trauma. And that gift was praised. So they kept getting better and better at that gift. And so unconscious, I remember watching the movie Ray with Ray Charles, and Ray learned how to, when he lost his eyesight and his brother had died. And all he did was weep that time, and he had gotten an addiction and all that problem. And his mama came and told him that it was all right. And it was because unconsciously, he was still reliving that trauma.
Yeah.
And that trauma drove him to his giftedness. And it goes back to that donut story. His giftedness covered his pain. And see, what you're asking people to have is an awareness that, hey, you need to deal with that pain. But they can't see that the behaviors that they're doing to develop this giftedness is covering their pain and actually making that pain deeper and more painful.
Wow. Look, ladies and gents, I'm going to be posting Willow Grace information in our chat, because as you know, they've been on their mental health counselors. And I know, I'm not sure about Tangia, but I do know Valencia has been certified as a trauma counselor. Yes.
And they need trauma.
That is really great, because we all have trauma. It's just the level and the depthness of it. And some folks have worked through it. I've still worked through stuff, because what you will discover once you work through something, once a layer get peeled back, then something else. But I can tell you from my experience, when new levels come up, they're not as triggering or traumatic for me, because I've dealt with things from the past. So I recognize, and you need to, where is that? What's going on here?
But here's the problem. Most people don't. They just cover it up with more achievements. And so here's the problem. See, and this is what I tell my clients all the time. See, when you have a breakup, you're thinking, man, I don't understand why I feel like my life is coming to an end. Well, here's the reason. Because you don't understand that you never dealt with that past scar of abandonment and rejection from your parent situation. So what you think should be a 4 or a 5 out of 10 is really a 20 out of 10, because it's connecting to that past pain that you never dealt with. So every time you reintroduce something that's similar to your past, you re-bring up those same painful emotions that's been buried there. So your amygdala, the part of your brain, and here's the part that people don't realize. Your brain's job is to try to keep you alive. So you have a part of your brain called the amygdala, and its job is to remember any very painful experience because it wants you to remember it so you can avoid it. Well, animals can avoid stuff. If they get away from a lion, they probably may not go down that same track. Human beings, we can't get away from it. We don't have that luxury. So you're going to be in a relationship at some point, and that relationship is going to be painful. If it's, you may break up, they may die. Some people, I remember hearing a story about a guy who he was in his 80s and his wife loved him to death, but he never fully gave himself to his wife because he did not want the pain of what it would mean when she died.
Wow.
And here's what he said when she died. What he didn't realize is now he's suffering the pain that he never allowed himself to love her.
Because he was protecting himself. So basically, it sounds like what you're saying, a lot of the high functioning depression comes from trauma. Mm-hmm. And so we start achieving, mm-hmm. and we get accolades or praise, and we're successful, outwardly, mm-hmm. but we're still inwardly just torn. Mm-hmm. So, because it seems like to me, this will be, as you said in the notes, that it's very hard to identify.
That's right.
So I'm going to talk about education in this. Okay. So with our school system, mm-hmm. right now, I don't think there's anything in curriculums to teach kids, like I say, life skills and coping skills. Everything's about achieve.
That's right.
What could we do, if anything, to try to get the education system to include life? Because we need reading, writing, arithmetic, but we also need life skills.
Well, here's the thing I would challenge everyone to do: become a mentor. Because the schools aren't going to do it. And here's an ugly reality, and it goes back to that study I told you. If you put all the kids who have mental illness in the room, 9 out of 10 of them come out of a single or broken home.
Goodness.
So how many of our kids come from broken homes? I tell you, 73%.
Good.
So you're looking at 73% of Black kids come out of broken or single homes. So
let me ask you this though, because I know what you're saying, bro. But if you're in the home, because to me the home can be broken with both parents in it. So is it so much the brokenness, or is it the trauma, the environment?
No, it's the single parent home, because there's more trauma they've done head-to-head studies with married families and with kids with. Now on that, if you pull up one of those things I showed you, I don't think I sent that to you. It's something I try not to send you too much, but I'll tell you this one though.
Well, let me tell you what you can do after this. You can go to Conversations Art and find this video and just add it in the chat.
Okay. But what they did, they took kids from married homes, and they took kids from single homes. They took kids from single homes with cohabitants, and what they found overwhelmingly, not even close, that you're talking about, I think it was only 1 out of 2,000 in married homes that had trauma versus 20 to 30 out of 2,000 from other or single homes.
Okay.
That's a big difference. When we're talking about trauma, we're talking about emotional abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse. It's 8.5 times more likely for a kid from a single or other home to be sexually abused than a kid from a married home. It is rare of the comparing the two. And so what people don't realize, those stats are ugly. It's not just that, because usually, hopefully back in the day, and you may have, like you said, there are people who have married homes where you have abuse and they talked about violence and stuff like that. So nobody's saying every married home is perfect. But what I am saying is that single home, that broken home, 9 out of 10 of the kids that have mental illness come out of that setting. And so those are the kids that are going to the schools that are having issues that aren't even having those issues taken care of. And then you compounding that with the environment within the school itself.
I'm going to put a comment up here that Miss Knight posted about the conversation she had with her children. I always reference the word past and future to my children. It can be painful sometimes when people look backward instead of looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it, you don't want to live in your past, but you have to go back there to figure out why you're functioning in your present the way you are sometimes, the things that's going on, so that you can not take it into your future.
Well, I'm going to give you a perfect example. So one of the things, this is why I tell people to get that book, the Reinventing Your Life. So I read it myself. So I took the schema test. So one of my issues is, of course, I have issues of subjugation, which means I always put other people's first. And I was the oldest kid coming out of a broken home, had to go get a job. So all that lines up. So how does that play out in the real world? Well, I'll tell you, I had started taking care of myself. And so I was doing what is called intermittent fasting. And I wasn't eating past 6 o'clock. So I don't tell other people how to live. So my wife, she cooks whatever the kids want. And on days she cooks stuff that I don't eat, I would just cook like shrimp and asparagus. Well, we had recently gone to the grocery store and I forgot to get this. So she was cooking, I think it was meatloaf. I may be wrong, but it was something that I don't eat, right? So she's cooking this and it's like 5:30, around 5:30. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm not eating that. The Publix is like 5 minutes away. Real story. So in the time, I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the store. But because of the way I have been conditioned, I harassed her. Well, what else can I, well, do you need something from the store? I couldn't even go to the store to get 2 items for myself without harassing her to get her to give me something just so I could go to the store. Now, I go to the store, she gives me a couple items. I get those items, I get mine. Now I'm feeling good about myself. And I can say this in retrospect because I do journaling myself. And so when I went back and wrote my story down, I laughed at myself. So that's why I'm telling this. So I get to the store, get in the line, then I get a text. It's like 4 or 5 more items on the list. And I'm like, she said she didn't need nothing. It's like 5:37. Now, I already told you I'm very black. These type of driven people, they have to have a certain regimen. So I don't eat past 6. And it's very black and white, perfectionistic. So I'm like, oh, crap. I'd already told her, okay, let me get out of line. So I get it. Now, a healthy way of reacting is to call and say, hey, I'm already in line. But because I did not realize that I was operating in my conditioned way, I got out the line to go get those items. I get back in line. Now the food is on the conveyor belt and going down. I get another text with more stuff. Guess what? You think I made that call that time? No. I apologized to the guy, got the stuff off the thing, and was going back around to get him. This is where conditioning comes in. This is what, see, you wouldn't do that, fam. But this is what I mean by most people operate unconsciously. And if you don't know your stuff, you're not paying attention. And I'm telling you, somebody who helps people, that I was operating in the way that I was conditioned. And so I remember like getting tension in my neck and my ears getting warm and I'm getting angry, like really angry. And so all of a sudden I realized, oh crap, I done did it again. And so I push the buggy, go in the bathroom, go into a stall. I sit and I do my little breathing exercise I tell you about, because one of the things why that's important is because when you get in that habit, it's automatic and you're no longer thinking rationally. So I did my breathing exercises, in my nose, 3, hold, 4 out, blowing out my straw, 6. And I did that 5 times to relax, to get me out of that system so I can think clear. And then I allowed myself to vent about how selfish she was about sending this text. So I'm sitting here, and then after I get through venting, then I do what is called reframing, the cognitive behavioral stuff. Yeah. And I said, well, whose fault is it really? Is it really her fault?
Because you could have left the house and when it got your
stuff. No, the first thing is, wasn't it you that told her to give you stuff? Yeah. She told you to go without getting anything. So the person that really doesn't care about you is you. It's you. And when are you going to do something about that? You see what I'm saying? So, and then I tell myself this, and I'm like, okay, now that it's already done, I'm going to go ahead and get this. If I eat at 6:30 tonight, I'm not going to be back in braces and everything is not going to go to the end, because that's where people like that go. Perfectionists, there's regimen. And so I had to talk myself off of that cycle. And so then I said, well, when I get home, I'm going to eat. We're going to talk about it. So when I'm walking in the door, I'm coming in with all these groceries. My wife said, "What are you doing with all them groceries?" And before I could say, "You sent me this text," I could hear the pitter patter of my daughters coming down the stairs. Them jokers were the one that, like, Treese was over there cooking meatloaf. These jokers heard me harass her. And here's the messed up part. This how we get caught up in our triggers. On the list was Nutella. Trees don't even eat Nutella.
You didn't even catch that.
I didn't even catch it because I was so caught up in the way I was conditioned.
Okay, gotcha.
You get what I'm saying? And so, and this is why most people, they don't want to do the work to look at themselves, because it's so easy to just do what you've always done.
And then too, self-examining means you got to look in that mirror.
That's right.
Strip bare of you are jacked up in some ways.
Right.
You got some issues that you need to deal with. And a lot of times we will blame other folk for things.
Not a lot of times, most times.
It's us. You know, if we didn't allow it, it's like, for instance, you could have said, wait a minute. I asked you what you want. Now, you sending me out, you could have made the call and say, hey, what's going on? Then you would have found out it was your daughter's.
But here's the thing, because I was so, remember we talked about that part in your brain, and this is what I try to get people to realize. See, people think they can will themselves to change. No, you have to actively be engaged on a regular basis with your issues. You need to know who you are. See, I know that that's my issue. And so when I know that's my issue, when people ask me to do stuff, now I got the rule of, okay, I'm about to get back with you. Why? Because I know I'll say yes real quick because it's in me to. You see what I'm saying? So the more I know who I am, it's not that I'm trying to change, because there's some good parts of thinking about others. That's what we talked about with the resilience. The issue is finding that balance. And most people don't find the balance because they don't even take time to get to know themselves.
You know, something I've been learning, like being an organized person is great. But when it moves over you being a control freak, it's not good.
That's right.
And helping people is good. But when you move over to being codependent, it's not good. So it's the balance that we need.
That's right.
So look, Dr. Coleman, it is
we didn't talk fast.
Where you are now. But this has been great. And we're doing a mental health topic every month, okay? Every month, because we're gonna break down the stigma. We're gonna eradicate this. We want to create an environment where people are free to say something is wrong and not be ashamed. And I'm gonna say this to parents: build an environment where your children feel safe, that they can come and share things with you if they're going through. And I know, like I said, I was raised by a mom that was very, very high strung and out there. And I had to realize I need to become more like my dad, because my dad was a laid back, chill person. And he was like, I'm not going to be running around here like the world coming to an end when it ain't necessary. He said, because if the world is coming to an end, ain't darn thing I can do about it.
That's right.
So it's going to come to the end. So I actually had to learn to be more like my dad. But my mom did all she knew. And I really feel like even some of the health issues that she experienced late in life was due to the fact that it was hard for her to relax.
That's right.
I mean, I'll say the last 5 or 6 years of her life, she got better at it. But it was because she had an illness where she was kind of forced to depend on people. You know what she discovered in that time? She did say this. She discovered that my dad could cook, which she said she didn't know. And this is what my dad said. He said, Mary, I couldn't cook because you were so controlling in the kitchen.
Yeah.
He said, I've known how to cook all my life. He said, but I wasn't going to fight you.
That's right.
To be in your kitchen.
That's right.
So a lot of the things, like you said, you reacted when you thought your wife was texting. A lot of things my mom thought. Well, my dad was like, no, you were just over the top. So right. I wasn't going to come in there and try to take over. So I really had to unlearn a lot of that and just realizing. And you all, the best thing you can do is admit what needs to change. Because if you don't ever admit it, you can't get any help for it. And some things require you to go see someone like Dr. Coleman or Willow Grace Wellness to go deeper. And I just tell anybody, it's good to just have a talk with a counselor or therapist, GP, just general purpose.
That's right.
Life is stressful.
It is.
life is really, really stressful. Look, let me show. I got to put this up here with you. Wanda said about you. I want you to read it. She said, Dr. Coleman displayed patient. Nutella would have been left in the store if it was my husband. That's funny. That is funny. Yeah, my husband would be like, man, who want Nutella? Where is Nutella? That's what he probably would have been saying.
But that goes back to what we said. You know, I was so caught up in the way I was conditioned that I didn't even think straight. But the one thing I'll tell people before we get ready to shut down, I know you get ready to, is there's a really good article called Scars That Don't Fade. I think it was on the Massachusetts General article, but it's called Scars That Don't Fade. And it talks about how childhood trauma still affects us even today.
Oh, I can believe it. So I just typed that in, y'all. Scars that don't fade.
Mm-hmm. They can.
And I got all the books and everything in there, and you all the ACE test. Just take it. I need to take it as well, because you'll be surprised. Like I said, you may have conquered this, but there's something else you need to deal with. And like I said, while you run around here with your high achieving self, because we applaud that kind of behavior, you just may not be as okay as you think you are, and got some things you need to dig down to. I know I'm at a point in life now that I can actually just sit down and do nothing, whereas before I was just busy, on the move, you know, always having to do something. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. I lay down now, even if I don't go to sleep. I practice what you say, turn those digital devices off. At least, was it an hour and a half you said before bedtime?
That's right, 90 minutes before bedtime.
And that's the TV, y'all. That's in the bedroom too. That's right. That's a device.
That's right.
Electronic.
That's right.
And just relax your mind. Put on some meditation stuff. Yep. And when I listen to it, I think about 2 minutes in, I'm knocked out. I don't even know what they said.
That's good.
What they said. So we just need to learn and relax. So Dr. Coleman, we thank you. We are looking forward to next month. Let me see if I can tell you all. Next month, you all will be calm in the sea of anxiety. And you all, one of my things is the Bible says be anxious for nothing. But how many know that's hard?
That's right.
That's hard. And then let me go down here next week, you all. You know, we don't talk about mental health, so we're going to pump y'all up next week. We got a singer coming on, a local recorded artist, Kendra Stuttermeyer. She happens to be one of our praise leaders at my church. Okay. She released the album, I think it was in November. It is wonderful. I mean, it is wonderful. So you will get to hear her next week. So Dr. Coleman, we thank you for joining us. We want to wish all of you a great evening and a great weekend that's coming up. I'm going to do my COVID PSA because it's still existing, you all. Mm-hmm. It's still out there. Be safe. Be safe. Right. Other folks don't have to wear a mask, but if you believe in it, put yours on. You do you, I'll do me. So you all have a good night. And let me see, somebody just put a comment before I go. Oh, Yawanda said thanks. She really enjoyed. So Yawanda, we hope you continue to tune in, share it with other folk. And if you check on our Facebook page, we also have some more mental health series on there as well. I think this is our 4th one, I believe, now, because we did an introduction to mental illness, and we did we did an introduction, then we did understanding mental illness, then finding light in the darkness of depression, and tonight. So Dr. Coleman's going to be on here forever. He don't know it, but it's going to be going on. You all have a good night.